Imagine a continent rising. A young leader standing tall against a financial system that has held Africa in chains for decades. This is the story of Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso, and how his bold move to challenge the CFA franc has sent shockwaves through the West, as Africa prepares to rise with its own money, the AFRO. For many people outside Africa, the term CFA franc doesn't mean much. But for 14 African nations, it has shaped their economies, their governments, and even their sovereignty for more than 70 years. And for the West, especially France, it has been a golden tool of control. So what exactly is the CFA franc? Let's take a step back. The CFA franc was created in 1945, when France was trying to maintain its colonial grip on Africa. The name originally stood for Colonie Française d'Afrique, the French colonies of Africa. Later, it was rebranded as Communauté Financière Africaine, the African Financial Community. But don't be fooled by the new name. The system remained the same. Under this arrangement, African countries using the CFA franc are required to deposit at least 50% of their foreign reserves into the French treasury. In other words, France controls their money. France decides how much currency circulates, France decides the exchange rates, and France has veto power over any major financial decisions. Think about it. Independent nations, but their economic lifeline is still tied to their former colonial master. For decades, African leaders have criticized this system, calling it modern-day slavery dressed up in financial language. But most of them did nothing, afraid of the consequences of breaking free. Until now.
Enter Ibrahim Traoré, the 34-year-old soldier who rose to power in Burkina Faso in 2022. From the beginning, he made it clear he is not here to bow to the West. He is not here to play by the old rules. And when it comes to money, Traoré is making history. In speeches across Africa, Traoré and his allies, leaders from Mali and Niger, have openly declared war on the CFA franc. They have announced their intention to create a new currency, independent from France, independent from Western manipulation. They call it the AFRO. This is not just a financial reform. This is a revolution. Think about what it means. For decades, the CFA franc has guaranteed France cheap access to African resources: gold, uranium, oil, cotton, cocoa. Whenever France wanted, it could print CFA francs, use them to buy African goods, and then control the reserves behind the scenes. African nations could never truly decide their own economic destiny. But with the AFRO, all of that changes. Suddenly, African nations can set their own exchange rates, control their own reserves, and reinvest their wealth back into their people instead of sending it to Paris. For the West, this is a nightmare. Imagine losing control over the gold mines of Burkina Faso, the uranium of Niger, the oil of Chad, the cocoa of Ivory Coast. Imagine 14 nations suddenly breaking free of a system that guaranteed France billions every single year. That is why Traoré's move is seen as so dangerous for the West. And that is why the fight over the AFRO is not just about money. It is about freedom. But let's be clear, creating a new currency is not easy. It requires planning, infrastructure, trust, and most importantly, unity. And unity has always been Africa's biggest challenge. For every leader like Traoré, there are others who still cling to France, still cling to the CFA franc. Some are afraid of Western retaliation. Some benefit personally from the old system. So here's the big question. Can Traoré and his allies actually pull it off? Already, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have taken the first steps. They've cut ties with France's military presence, expelled Western ambassadors, and redirected their trade partnerships towards Russia, China, and other non-Western allies. They've announced the creation of a confederation, the Alliance of Sahel States, and pledged to move toward full economic integration.
And at the center of this vision is the AFRO. Now imagine this. If the AFRO succeeds, it won't just be Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. Other countries could join: Senegal, Ivory Coast, Benin, Togo. If even half of the CFA zone adopts the new money, it will completely destroy France's economic influence in Africa. But the West is not going to sit back quietly. Expect sanctions, expect propaganda, expect attempts to divide African leaders and stir up conflicts. This has happened before. Every time an African leader has tried to escape Western control, the result has been assassination, coups d'états, or destabilization. Patrice Lumumba of Congo, assassinated. Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, assassinated. Muammar Gaddafi of Libya, killed after proposing a gold-backed African dinar. And now Ibrahim Traoré steps into the same battlefield. But here's what makes him different. He is not alone. Unlike Gaddafi, who stood largely isolated, Traoré has built an alliance. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso are united. They share resources, strategies, and defense. They're also backed by global powers who want to see the end of Western dominance. Russia, for example, has already signaled support for African economic independence. China, too, quietly, is ready to invest in Africa's future. So what's next? In the coming months, we will see whether Traoré and his allies can turn words into action. Will the AFRO be launched? Will banks and businesses across Africa accept it? Will it gain the trust of the people and, most importantly, will it survive Western pressure? One thing is certain: the West is afraid. Because if the AFRO succeeds, it will send a message to the entire global South. You can break free. You can create your own path. You don't need the dollar, you don't need the euro, and you don't need permission from Paris or Washington. And that is the real shock awaiting the West. Not just a new currency, but the birth of a new era. Because when a people control their own money, they control their own destiny. For now, the world watches as a young leader from a small West African nation dares to dream of something greater. Ibrahim Traoré is not just fighting for Burkina Faso. He is fighting for Africa. He is fighting for independence. He is fighting for the future. And as the AFRO rises, the question is no longer if Africa will break free, but when.